out on, or if you're going through our multitudes of social media that we're beaming out through now, or if you're watching this recording. Thank you for your time and essence and being with us. Before we kick off the Indigenous Ways Wisdom Circle this evening with our extraordinary guest that I'm so excited about, we just want to acknowledge our traditional caretakers and ancestors of the lands that we reside on here in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and also take this opportunity to, wherever you are beaming in from this moment, to acknowledge the traditional caretakers and ancestors of the lands that you are residing on, so we could all be here this evening. Thank you.
And as always, this is Tosh. Indigenous Ways is dedicated to bridging cultural exchange with people globally. And this is the best way we found to do it is through this platform. So thank you all for joining in with us this evening. On Wednesday nights, we have our Wisdom Circle speakers, and we choose people that are doing extraordinary things with their lives, that are making positive change for a beautiful world. And that's Wednesday evenings at 6 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. We like to honor people of color. We like to honor deaf people. We like to honor LGBT. We like to honor all colors of people, because our goal is to drop the walls of separation. It's not about conquering and dividing. It's about bringing us all together so we can learn from each other to be a better people. Friday nights, that's entertainment night. That's when we like to bring in our amazing, talented, again, the same type of people, which is all people, to come in and entertain us with some beautiful storytelling through music, poetry. Sometimes we're able to find some amazing comedians. If you know anybody, if you know any good comedians, let us know. We will contact them and we'll put them on a Friday night. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and welcome our beautiful presenter tonight, Dr. Carla Garcia Fernandez. And I say that with great honor because I knew Carla many, many years ago when she worked at the New Mexico School for the Deaf. And she was the multicultural facilitator of all kinds of stuff for the school. She just brought in so much variety for the students and the staff. And she welcomed me with such beautiful respect and honor. And I will forever, ever, ever love Carla for welcoming me into the New Mexico School for the Deaf when she did. And Carla has gone on to do many things. For one, she went and got married to this beautiful man named Rogelio, who is with us tonight. Hi, Rogelio. We love you too. And she also went off and got her PhD, which to me is really impressive. I mean, just that word, PhD. Oh my gosh, woman of color representing deaf culture. Oh my God, from New Mexico, Santa Fe, Carla, Dr. Carla. Yay, we're so excited. And there's Arletta's son, Demetrius, who you met, Carla, remember last week on FaceTime. Anyways, I better be quiet, everybody. Let me just be quiet so we can have some of Carla's beautiful thoughts and beautiful spirit and heart tonight. Welcome, Carla, everybody. Yay!
Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us tonight. One moment. Sorry, I had a video pop up. Thank you all for joining, for being here this evening. For some of you, it may be afternoon. For some of you, it may be early morning, depending on where you're coming in from all over the world, perhaps. So today's theme is rise, and resilience. That's the theme for today. So with that theme in mind, I did think about that quite a bit, and I reflected on my life and my experiences and what I wanted to share with you all this evening. And after thinking on that a bit, thought about the entirety of the past 30 years. I think about that time span from the present, thinking back 30 years ago, in as part of my own life, and I thought about my own experiences. And thinking about the idea of self-talk, I reflected on who I am as a person. What is my purpose? What is the purpose of my existence here on this earth? Why am I here? I also thought about my own natural gifts that I have been given, that I was born with. And so many things came to mind, and I continue to think and explore those topics, as I'm sure many of you all have done as well. Thought about your own journeys and explored those topics. So thinking back for the past 30 years of my own experience, I think I realized I didn't always clearly understand who I was. Checking to make sure we're okay as far as interpretation. So for my own journey, thinking about the past 30 years, it has been very profound for me. And I feel like I've arrived at a place where I have multiple founts of knowledge, not only in my head, but in my heart as well. How did I get there? How did I arrive at this place? That's part of what I'm going to talk to you all tonight about. So today, roughly 96% of deaf children are born to hearing parents across the United States. That's the statistic. Now, in my time, I was born in the late 60s. And at that time, the statistic was 90%. So 90% of deaf children were born to hearing parents. So currently, the statistics show that 30% out of that 90% of those parents know sign language. So only 30% of hearing children learn how to sign for their deaf kids. The rest of them do not. So imagine that for a moment. So many deaf children without a clear way to communicate at home. For those of you who can hear, you grew up with access to TV, to radio, to conversations around you. You could hear what was going on in the other room. You were able to acquire language just in your natural environment. You know, even if you were to go out, let's say you're in the car, you hear the radio, you're still able to hear and access language. Hearing children don't have any barriers to that. And in public spaces as well, there's no barriers to accessing language. Think about all that knowledge that's out there in the world. How do people acquire that? Now, in my own home, when I was growing up, my family, they did use sign language. Now, maybe there were different skill levels. They were not necessarily completely fluent. My mother did sign very well. My father, not so well. He used a lot of gestures in order to communicate with me rather than a formal sign language. But they understood the importance of signing all the time. I'm sorry, they did not. So the only time that I noticed my parents would sign was when they were talking to me. I also have a deaf brother who's older than me, and so anytime they wanted to talk to him, they would sign. But that was pretty much it. They didn't use sign language apart from those times when they were speaking directly to us. So for me, in my own identity formation and understanding who I was, I felt like I came to that very late in the game. Now, research has shown in the ensuing years that identity is so critical. It's so important for deaf children to be able to understand their own identity, accept their own sense of self and who they are. That is so important. For those deaf children who have hearing parents and who don't have access to communication, so many of them experience mental health issues later in life, such as depression, anxiety. They struggle with a host of issues, and research has borne this out. So, thinking about the English language, of course, you all know that the English language is the dominant language, and I'm speaking of a dominant spoken language in this context, the dominant spoken language in the United States. The United States is very English centric. But there are other marginalized spoken languages that exist in this country. There are many of those. So English is known as the dominant language, as opposed to multiple other marginalized spoken languages. And this is something that we are all familiar with, this concept. Now, for the idea of a signed language, the same dynamic exists. Sign language is not well received by spoken language communities. People in general, people who speak and hear, automatically follow an unspoken rule or assumption that language occurs through the mode of speech and hearing only. So for sign languages, if we think about this, and again, through research that has shown this, that sign languages are real languages in and of themselves. They have use of complex space, grammar, a host of other linguistic features. But that's not something that most people are aware of. So it's important that people realize that sign languages are true and natural languages. Therefore, sign languages exist in equality to spoken languages. They are equal. Now, for the United States, American Sign Language is known as the dominant sign language in this country. And so many people think deaf people in the United States use American Sign Language, and that's the only sign language. That's not true. There are also a host of other marginalized sign languages used in the United States. So the dynamic that we see between spoken languages and sign languages are really the same. So thinking back to my own experience growing up, again, I didn't have a lot of access to language naturally in my environment. Only when my parents signed to me or when other people signed did I get that information. So I was always curious. I always had a craving for sign language in my environment, anywhere I could find it. As soon as I saw somebody signing, I was drawn to those people. That was my own experience. So for higher education, I had to acknowledge my own privilege, the privilege that I had in order to go to a place of higher education. I received my bachelor's, my master's, and then finally my PhD. So I did have an opportunity to access the educational system, to be in a classroom, to learn. And often it was via interpreters, like with what is happening currently, communicating with people via interpreters. So I do want to talk a little bit about why ethnic studies is important. But before I do that, let me back up a little bit. I grew up and I attended New Mexico School for the Deaf as a student. I graduated from that school. And we often had conversations among students, staff, teachers, a variety of people there at the school. We would have conversations about identity, but it was always only identity as a deaf person, about having pride to be a deaf person. And there's a long history of hearing people oppressing deaf people. And we don't necessarily have time for that story. Maybe that's for another day. But during these discussions at the deaf school, a common theme that came up was talking about our deaf identities. And that was the exposure that I got as far as identity. Now, once I went into higher education, I got my bachelor's degree from Gallaudet University, and I learned about ethnic studies. Well, not necessarily there because it was not provided at Gallaudet University. I went after that to 2 hearing universities for my master's and then my PhD. And that's where I finally was exposed to courses in ethnic studies and where those courses were available. And I really want to say how important that was and stress that greatly because my communication access at home was very limited. Again, I had further opportunities to learn from my own people, from deaf people, but not necessarily about my history, my language, my people. So that portion of my identity was missing. It wasn't really till I had a chance to take ethnic studies classes that my mind was open to that, what is out there. And so for me, that was a very painful journey that required a lot of inward looking and understanding who I was, and it was a long process. Now, ethnic studies, let's say if we talk about specifically about Black studies or Indigenous studies, or perhaps Mexican American studies, Asian studies, Middle Eastern studies, there are a variety of different classes offered. And they also, women's studies is also a course that's offered. LGBTQ studies is also offered. So there are a host of classes that are offered, but those topics aren't discussed enough in the K through 12 settings. Often people come to this very late. So for me, when I finally took a class on Mexican American studies, I didn't really learn until then about my ancestors. And I know, as Tosh had mentioned, it's so important that we honor our ancestors and the people who came before us. Now, back before in the day, if somebody would have said that to me, I would not have understood that. I would not have understood the importance of ancestors or who these people were because I did not have access to my own history. It wasn't until I took a Mexican American Studies course that I learned so many of these things, and it was so eye-opening for me. It was just a fantastic experience, very spiritual. It was a way for me to connect my mind and my spirit. And so at that point, I finally found my identity as a deaf Chicana. So I have to thank the interpreters that were involved in that process. And we often take interpreters for granted. And we should not do that. Interpreters are often a link, a bridge to working together. They're not just interpreters. I know for me, and within the signing community as well, interpreters, they also link us to people who use spoken languages. So it's building bridges between 2 communities that allows access for people that normally would not be able to communicate with one another to be able to communicate. And all that is made possible through interpreters. Now, interpreters must have a good attitude. They have to be motivated, passionate. They have to understand the cultures they're working between. They have to understand the communities. They cannot come to this work with a savior attitude. It's very important to honor and respect the communities that they work with. So thinking on the topic of interpreters, when I took classes in Mexican American Studies, I do have to share this story of something that happened to me. This was a Mexican American Studies class that I was taking, and there was a student, a hearing student in the class, who raised his hand and said, kind of spontaneously, "I want to share a poem." And the professor said, "Yes, please do share this poem." And he started speaking, but he started speaking in Spanish. And I had two interpreters that were working that class with me, and one of them was a trilingual interpreter who also spoken Spanish. The other interpreter was bilingual and only knew ASL and English. Now, the trilingual interpreter at that point heard this student reciting his poem, and she was able to, in the moment, render that into American Sign Language. And his poem came with so much feeling and heart and passion. He was talking about his own father and how his father worked in the fields and how he cultivated crops and for food for his own family and for the people. And so this student shared this poem about his father working in the field and how his father later became sick because of the pesticides that were spread on the crops, regardless of who was working beneath. And so the father inhaled so many of these pesticides and eventually did become sick. His health deteriorated. At this point, in the middle of this poem that the student was sharing, he was sharing this poem, and the interpreter was listening to the spoken Spanish and signing American Sign Language. And for me, I felt the tears welling in my eyes because it was so touching and so powerful. If the interpreter has the ability to if you say, bridge that gap and render that information seamlessly to the person, that skill is so invaluable. Because that student who spoke out, he's still a member of the community, right? All of us, regardless of whether we are hearing or deaf, we have stories to share with one another, and those stories are important. Now with interpreters, thinking about availability of interpreters, for my own self, through that knowledge that I received, I felt like my identity continued to grow. I didn't feel like just a deaf person. I was a deaf Chicana. I explored my female identity. And I really believe that that helped me heal. That was so important to my own healing process. So for this, this group, Indigenous Ways, I have seen interpreters working these events. I have seen people come together, learn about one another, really embrace one another in their stories. And that kind of event is so powerful. I really applaud Tosh and Elena for this work. It is so important to invest in this type of work, and I want to recognize that. My hope is that awareness will grow about these events and we will continue to see more attendance, because I feel like this is a fantastic model. We need more. We need more of this. So you all must support one another. We must all push for full access for signing communities as well. Often hearing people take it for granted, take language for granted. And so now, because of that development of my own identity, I feel myself a proud deaf Chicana. I look at the younger generation regardless of whether it's the spoken language community or the sign language community, still there are many who are not secure in their own identities, or they are not aware they haven't done that growth. And currently I teach at CSUN, California State University, Northridge, and I have many undergraduate students that I teach that are not sure about their own identities, who haven't done that digging. And so we need to have these types of conversations about culture, about language, about values. That process, learning about ourselves, digging deep, it's so important. And that process is so empowering. Learning to love yourself, to love ourselves. Because if we don't know how to love ourselves, we always think we may feel that uncertainty, not sure about things. Our dreams may be clouded to us. Our way is not clear. And we may see different things happening in this world and feel that uncertainty because we don't know what it is we have to offer, because we don't know who we are. And many, many people feel this way. So it's so important to think about who we are so that we can love ourselves. And then we can grab our dreams. And we know what it is that we want, and we can hold on to those. So I know that other people are hungering for those connections as well with others. Relationships are so important, those relationships that we have with others. It's not about intimate relationships, but relationships with anyone, with human beings, with other humans, those relationships that we cultivate. It's so important to understand other people, their culture, their language, their identities, so that we can interact with them and form those connections and build those bridges. And that process in and of itself really is so liberating. Now, I remember when I finished at the University of Texas, I had such a better understanding of who I was. And I had such a stronger commitment to Latinos who still had not found their identity. Perhaps they were deafblind or deaf disabled, hard of hearing, low vision, multiple different identities. I had such a commitment to foster that self-awareness. I really wanted to be a mentor, encourage that identity growth in others. As I'm sure that many of you are the same, it is a challenge to learn about yourself and navigate that journey, because we only live once, and we don't have any other life. And so we must take this life that we have and use it. And so I want to talk a little bit about one book that I love. There's a book that I particularly love that was so important to me on my own journey that I read in graduate school. And this book was assigned to us. We had several books that we read, but this book in particular really helped solidify my identity as a Chicana. And so the author is Gloria Ansaldúa. And she wrote the book called The Borderlands. So it's entitled The Borderlands, The New Mestiza. This is the book. I remember the first time I read this book, I really struggled with it because the book is written in both English and Spanish. And remember, one advantage is at that time I ordered it online. I tended to go the thrifty way and try to save money, save the environment. And so I tried to do that. And when my book arrived, I opened the book, and luckily it did have, the Spanish portions did have English translations written in the notes, in the margins. So it was, because it was a used book, I was so grateful to the person who had done that. So I don't feel like, of course, everybody can define it differently, but I felt as I read through the book that this was so powerful for me. And I had many moments where I was so overcome that I cried because Ansaldúa spoke to my heart through her book. And for me, this book was life-changing. And so I want to read a quote in particular that really speaks to me and I feel like is appropriate for today. And so this is taken from this piece called A Struggle of Borders. Page 77, in case you're interested. Oh, I'm sorry, page 99. And this is the third edition that I'm reading from. So there's a opening paragraph that's in English, and then at the bottom there's a piece in Spanish. And so the interpreter will read it as it is, as the text appears in the book. A struggle of borders. Because I, a mestiza, mestiza meaning mixed, continually walk out of one culture and into another, because I am in all cultures at the same time. Deaf culture, Latino culture, women culture, United States culture, indigenous culture. We are exposed to so many indigenous people in New Mexico, where I grew up. We walk with so many overlapping cultures. And so I always think about that space of overlap. And I'll continue reading. So because I, a mestiza, continually walk out of one culture and into another, because I am in all cultures at the same time. And this is where the Spanish starts. Alma, entre dos mundos, 3, 4. Me zumba la cabeza con lo contradictorio. Estoy norteada por todas las voces que me hablan simultáneamente. That quote from this book spoke to me so deeply. I felt like Ansaldúa was speaking to me. I felt like she was telling me, it's okay. It's okay. You don't have to pick one culture. You can have them all. Embrace them. I embrace the multiple knowledges that I carry, and I continue this life journey until my heart stops beating. Thank you.
Ahead, Isabel, Joni. Thank you very much, Carla. That is so beautiful. Hold on one second. Oh gosh, that is so beautiful. I found myself tearing up in my eyes when you spoke, Carla, because I felt like you were talking directly to me. See, when you speak in a vulnerable way like that, it gives me permission to feel my vulnerabilities too. And when tears happen, I think it's healing for all of us. I particularly, especially like it when I see men cry. Oh my God, it feels like the earth is healing right before my very eyes because the patriarchy has taught men not to cry. I so not believe in that. Do not believe in that. Life is beautiful, Carla. You're beautiful. And I hope that one day we can invite your husband to be our speaker to have that balance, the beautiful female Chicana, and have your husband come and present to us his experience. He's so beautiful. I love his beautifulness too. So a few things came to me. Carla, I want to also tell everybody that our beautiful sister Carla actually gave us the correct sign for Indigenous ways. She said, do ways and then do the Indigenous. And that's the proper way to say Indigenous ways. So thank you, Carla, for giving us the proper ASL sign for our nonprofit, Indigenous Ways. And looking forward to reading the book, The Borderlands. I was introduced to a beautiful Chicana Mexican writer named Sor Juana Inez de la Cruz. And she was born hundreds of years ago. And she was like a Mexican Shakespeare, but a woman. And amazing story. So if you ever get a chance, she's got books that are written. Her poetry is like Shakespeare, I'm serious. And on the other side of the page, it's transcribed into English. And I did a thesis on her for my undergrad many years ago. So I want to keep talking, but I'm going to just say thank you, Carla, and I'm going to pass it over to Elena, beautiful Elena.
Yeah, powerful medicine this evening, Carla. So thank you so much for sharing your experience of you coming into yourself, but also importantly for me, things that we can ponder on. So very soon, if you're in Zoom, we're going to invite you to come in, but during this time, I want you to think of some of the discussion that Carla has invoked that might be affecting you. It's an opportunity to share those thoughts or ask more questions to deepen our own self-awareness. If you're in our multiple social media networks, you might want to think about what you can ask, and we can, or just have a statement for yourself, which is wonderful. So while you're pondering upon those things, this is what's going on next. And our wisdom, oh, look, we've got Carla back again. Just kidding. No, we've got the wonderful, there's a picture of Joanna Harcourt Smith, who will be our wonderful guest next week at the Wisdom Circle, which is the 19th.
And on Friday, this is Tosh. On Friday, we have Mama's Black Sheep, one of my favorite duos, LGBT duo from Baltimore. So we're looking forward to them.
And then all of the series is possible because of our sponsors that we want to acknowledge. The First Peoples Fund, the Santa Fe Arts and Culture Department, the National Endowment of the Arts, New Mexico Arts. And for our Wednesday Wisdom Circle, we also have the National Endowment of Humanities and also the New Mexico Humanities Council. Just below us, You'll see all our social media links. So if you're looking at us on one of those wonderful pages, please be sure to like our pages. That is across the screen, and support us in the habit that we are doing. Also, want to do a special thank you to our individual donors that have kept the Indigenous Ways virtual events, as Tash said before, Wednesday, the Wisdom Circle, where we are now. And also on Fridays, we have the concert series. So here are the links that also support our wonderful ASL interpreters that have access available for all, and also our extraordinary presenters who we've been able to present through this format. We started on the 1st of April, and we are up to our 39th show. You can see that in our archives of IndigenousWays.org in virtual events, where you'll see all 39 presenters. You'll also see there in the next 24 hours an edited video of Dr. Carla Garcia Fernandez. So if you are looking at this through the recorded, through our social media networks, or you're looking at this through our recording, please be sure to share that link at IndigenousWays.org. You can sign up for our newsletter that tells you all the wonderful things that we've been doing through the platform of what's been happening.
And it can't be more convenient and beautiful and serendipitous than to have Carla this evening, after last evening's announcement that we have a beautiful woman of color running for vice president. I can't tell you, I just went, yes, finally. We've got a vice president, a woman of color, and then we got Carla this evening. So I was just like, oh, gosh, my heart is so happy. So thank you, Carla. And I'm just really enjoying watching the amazing interpreters tonight. I do know sign language, so they're just amazing.
So now's this wonderful time if you're in Zoom and you want to check in with Carla, who's just stepped out and she'll be turning on her camera soon. We're going to encourage each and every one of you who want to, through Zoom, to turn your cameras on. While you're turning on your cameras, so this is the time if you want to, because there's been a lot of discussion which Carla has hit on, where you might want to just in your own processes share or say something to Carla. Just as you're beaming in or trying to figure out where your cameras are, I do want to say this, VJ from Oxford, the Oxdog Theatre down in Albuquerque, says in social media, thank you, Elena, Tash, Carla, Indigenous Ways, so Juana needs to be better known. Great mention. Bye for now. And Shoshone Shah Rains is also, and she says, hey, I'm here. Hi, hugs. Thank you. But anyway, oh, yes, you're in Zoom too. How do you do that? You're doing multiple things. I love it. Anyway, I'm going to go down and if you see, turn on your camera. That's what it means. If you need interpreting access, S. Dunn is our person that you can, on the top of her right-hand corner, you can pin her video. And if you don't want to come in, that's perfectly fine.
Okay, not everybody speak at the same time. We want to hear from you all. It's Shah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if I was on or not. Okay. I also appreciated the interpreters very much this evening. Carla, I did not get to hear your entire presentation. I was actually at my work environment and got off a little bit late, but I did appreciate hearing so many wonderful things. One thing I wanted to comment on and say thank you for is as a mestiza woman, on the borderlands. Growing up, you had mentioned that you're exposed to so many different cultures, so many different ways of life, different languages. And however, you did not let any one specific one define you. Rather, you could choose to be part of all of that and any of that. And I really appreciated hearing that. I myself grew up along the Mexican border and was exposed to several different cultures as a young person. However, there was a lot of pressure when I was younger to pigeonhole me, pigeonhole me in one specific culture. And it came from both sides of the fence, so to speak. People would look at my appearance and want to pigeonhole me in one specific culture. Yet internally, culturally, I was more raised in a Hispanic, Latino, Mexican environment. So that was the culture I was more attuned to than any other culture. Yet people want to pigeonhole you and say, oh no, you can't be part of this or you can't be part of that. However, I remember something wonderful happening many, many years ago. I went to what we call in Spanish a matanza, and that's where they slaughter a pig or an animal, and it's an all-day affair. It's wonderful. It really is very wonderful. Music, cerveza, lots of good stuff. And I remember a gentleman saying, "Are you having fun?" A Mexican gentleman. And I said, "Oh yeah, I'm having a great time." And he said, "Don't you wish you were Mexican?" And it just kind of really impacted me at the moment. I thought, oh my God, does that mean because I don't have the appearance that I can't enjoy this? That's what hit me at my younger age. I was pretty young and kind of a kid. But then I realized, oh, and this gentleman's daughter corrected her father and she said, "Dad, don't do that. He can enjoy the culture as much as anybody, and he knows as much about the culture as anybody." And he kind of retracted at that moment, but it really kind of gave me some freedom at that moment that, oh my gosh, I don't have to be this, I don't have to be that. I can enjoy whatever I'm exposed to and be part of it. And it sounds like yourself growing up multicultural, different languages, American Sign Language, Spanish, English, that you have also come to those crossroads and realized that I don't have to be one thing. I can enjoy them all. And so I appreciated hearing that. I just wanted to tell you that. Thank you so much.
Love you, Carla.
Thank you
So
for
glad you came in. Thank you.
Story, Carlin. Thank you for sharing your story.
Okay, who wants to share? Anybody can share now.
Hilda.
Hilda, go.
Christine, I see, has her hand up. Can you see me okay? So this is Hilda. Christine is my partner. Oh, okay. I was looking at the name on your square. Okay. As I watched you share about your experience, I thought about what if the roles were reversed? So coming from being hearing and growing up in a deaf family, just a moment for the interpreter. So I grew up in a deaf family. And that included residential schools as well for the deaf. My father was hard of hearing. My mother was completely deaf. And I also am hard of hearing. I have siblings as well that are deaf and hard of hearing. And so, again, I come from a deaf family. Um, and so we've always used American Sign Language. That was the norm for my childhood, was to have access to communication in that way. My father decided that I would go to a residential deaf school because, again, my parents had experienced this, did not want me to have to deal with the frustrations of public school. And so they made this decision. And I saw things that I'd never before realized. Many of my deaf peers there had the same experience as you, Carla, where they didn't have access to regular language and communication in their family and were jealous. And so I felt very fortunate in that respect. Really, it was kind of ironic. When I completed my time at the residential school and went on to Gallaudet. And so at that time, then I was thinking of, well, you have some hearing, you don't belong at Gallaudet, you should go to a public university or college. And I did, actually. I did. And I experienced grave difficulties without interpreters, without regular access to communications. They thought that, because I had some residual hearing, that I would do fine. And of course, there was information that was missed. I had to borrow notes from my peers to make sure that I had access to what I needed to in the classrooms. And when I eventually started teaching, I decided that I would teach in deaf studies. This was in Maryland. So the residential school that I attended was in Maryland, excuse me. And I also taught then later on at the residential school in Wisconsin. And at that time, there was a policy that required that total communication be the mode of communication. And I felt very sorry and saddened for my students. But I followed the policy. And then, of course, when we were individual and alone, I would use American Sign Language. Much later, doing bicultural, bilingual, excuse me. There was a movement much later and I did join that movement that allowed then for deaf individuals to learn true American Sign Language. That was an eye-opener. But it made me feel very good. I have to say, because during that time where we had to focus on total communication and English was a language of choice, it impacted me very gravely. And so later on, I worked with high school students in Kentucky. And we set up a deaf studies program where we talked about language and culture, and to see the improvement that took place in deaf students' esteem at that time, I felt good about that. Because at that time, we were saying, use your language. American Sign Language is your language, and you're free to use that. And so I just wanted to share that with you, Carla, in response to the experiences that you've shared this evening. Thank you so much, and blessings to you. God bless you. And you too, Tosh and Elena. God bless you both for making this possible and also for the interpreters. Much love to you all.
Thank you. So this is Tosh. Thank you so much, Hilda. We love you. You are one of our #1 supporters for this show. You and your beautiful partner show up every week. Thank you very much. So I just want to know who wants to share next, or Rebecca Arano.
Hold on just a moment. Let the interpreter find your photo.
Do you see her, Chandra? Rebecca? Awesome.
I do now. Hello, my name is Rebecca Argon. Hi, everybody. I am from New York. Hello out there. This is my first time participating in one of the Wednesday night wisdom circles. Excellent.
Sarah Youngbear. Do you want to say anything, Sarah? Oh, she's not looking. Anybody can share. Christina. Christina. Yeah, Christina from New York City.
Hello. This is Christina. That is my sign name. I actually have been in both Louisiana and California. And I feel such a connection to what Carla shared tonight. So much a part of that has also been my experience. I can definitely identify. I've dealt with my own struggles in identity growing up. I mean, growing up Hispanic and, signing either Mexican or signing Chicana, depending on which state I was in at the time. But I am fourth generation Chicana. And I can think back in the day, thinking about my great grandparents, they were free to travel and to roam. My great grandfather, who is Mexican, participated in the revolt with Pancho Villa many years ago. And I mean, I could hear him talk about this I could go on and talk about what he shared about this for hours and hours, but I will keep this brief. I really enjoyed your presentation, Carla. I can identify with many of your struggles. I definitely agree with the feelings of anger and discontent, and even the resulting mental health issues. I think about my own story and my mother's challenges that she went through, and divorce and relationships. And today I am 57 years old, and I have my first cousin and sisters. I know are also participating. Just a moment. I'm not on good terms with many of my family members. Not speaking to many of them. A lot of them have been very oppressive. A lot of them have participated in really oddest behaviors. And so I have had my own set of struggles with how to speak truth, and how to find my identity. Again, my father was Hispanic, my mother was white. And so living and existing in both of those cultures. And technically, I'm hard of hearing because I can speak. So I didn't grow up as deaf necessarily. I did go to a residential school for the deaf in California. And I remember my last year noticing that I was being bullied and picked on for signing C and for talking. They would tell me that, I resonated too much with hearing culture. I had a hearing boyfriend, and the list goes on and on and on. Um, I had some gang involvement as well in adolescence, living in the hood, so to speak, and growing up in the hood. And I'm still in touch actually with some people from where I grew up from. But finding my identity in all of those different ways and dealing with all of the oppression that I dealt with because of racism and also because of my deafness as well. Being around hearing people and family, the struggle continues. So I can say that I'm looking forward to reading The Borderlands. That is not a book that I've read just yet. I actually have a whole stack of books that I've been gathering and putting on the shelf. And I will definitely be reading that one. I have lots of books in my library related to gang life, related to Chicano history. I have lots of poetry, um, like Sandy, that particular author. I read lots of her poetry. I also read a lot of very powerful books that are about Spanish Americans or Hispanic Americans and about the previous wars, victims of wars. And again, Hispanic Americans, and soldiers that have been on the front lines of these wars in our history, those that have then been slaughtered as a result. Again, racial oppression and other types of oppressions. There's a lot that fills my library. I really appreciated you sharing your story, Carla. And again, I so resonated with what you said this evening. Um, I'm not sure what else to say. I can continue on again for hours and hours when we talk about racism and culture. But again, thank you so much for sharing your story and your experience this evening.
Please read the book. I
And
recommend
I am going to get that one and read it. I will.
please.
Oh, and then also coming from a family that was involved in agriculture many years ago, I actually still have some cousins, second and third cousins, that are multiple generation farmers and agriculturists. They are in California at this time, but my dad also used to be a farmer. And they start young in that area, working during the agriculture season and then returning back to school then after that season is over later in the semesters. Um, and then sometimes leaving school then early to return to tend the fields. Children that grow up in those type of professions and environments often miss a lot of school. Um, but really, I can say for my father that made him who he was, which was a hard worker until the day that he retired. I have so much to say on this topic. I'm just happy to be here this evening.
I hope we can connect because I'm focusing on deaf Chicano research. And so
Uh-huh.
I need to do more interviews with
Oh,
people,
that's great.
backgrounds, people that have a connection. So you and I need to connect. Maybe Tosh can help us connect. I can get your information, and you and I can connect later on.
I will send it to you in the chat right now.
Okay, that'd be great. And we can talk about this more because that's something that I would really like to expand for Chicano studies.
Mm-hmm.
Deaf Chicano studies. We need more. So this is a perfect example. Your stories that you're sharing, I would love to incorporate those.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
I just want to we got a message from Sarah Youngbear, and her sign is S. Brown. That's her sign name, Sarah Youngbear. She says, your presentation was very amazing, Carla. Sorry I kept missing some due to poor quality Wi-Fi down here. We just got hit by a really serious storm. Thank you for sharing your story with us. And this is our native deaf sister, Sarah from Iowa. And then Geraldine Barney, another Navajo sister from Boston. She says, Tosh, we're going to turn in. Great show. Knowing oneself resonates with me for sure. Thank you. Hugs. And also, I just want to say we got a beautiful sister here on the screen with us, Arletta Tolan. She's right in the middle screen. Her sign name's like Arizona. Arletta. She's the Navajo sister that taught me sign language when I was 12, 13 years old. There she is. Arletta's going to be our presenter next month. So she is grassroots from the Navajo Reservation. Super, super traditional woman. And I'm so honored to know her. So Arletta is going to be our speaker. I'm so excited.
I look forward to that. I look forward.
Yes. Okay. Anybody else want to share? Leslie, how's it going, Leslie? How you doing, Leslie? Long time no see. Thanks for joining us. Would you like to share anything, Leslie?
No.
Okay. Anybody want to share before we call it a night? I don't want this night to end. But
Any questions from anybody?
Carla might be tired.
Okay. If we haven't got any, oh yeah, Nell, you got your hand up. Great, Nell. Thank you for being here. It's great to see you. And now, oh good, you've taken it off mute.
Good to see everyone. I really enjoyed Carla's presentation. Is it possible that I could be a part of her study? I am interested in that.
Let's connect and share. If you can share your email, if anybody here would like to, I'm focusing on deaf Chicano studies. So please do reach out to me. I would love to make connections. So please leave your email. If you don't feel comfortable typing it in the chat box, then please give it to Tosh and Elena and they will pass it on to me. So either type it in the chat or share it with our hosts.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Nell.
Thank
Okay, if there's no other comments or revelations from people in our Zoom and also our social media, we'll wrap up. Yep, Tosh.
I just want to make sure. Luke, did you want to say something? Sign name. Luke.
Oh, I didn't see you there. Luke, I didn't recognize you. Gosh.
You can't see everybody at one time. You can only see a limited number of people that then kind of stream across the screen. So I've noticed the same thing with the developing Chicano identity. And then I know that you worked at NMSD, right? At the time that you were pursuing your graduate degree.
Oh, you're freezing a little bit. You're freezing, Luke.
Okay, I don't think Luke can see us. But in regards to culture, and you know, if you don't know who you are and don't know where you're from, and we're having some technical problems, so we're not able to get the entire message. Sometime as a mestiza or mestizo, and we're having technical problems again.
Sorry, this is Tosh. I'm so sorry to interrupt, Luke, but your screen is freezing up. We're not able to see your message. So would you mind typing it into the chat box? That might be the best option for us. I'm so sorry, Luke. I really want to hear you, but now you're gone. I can't see you. Okay. Oh boy, that's not fun.
So, just at this time, if there's no one else that wants to share anything, I don't think we can see anything else in our chat box, but we want to just take this time to thank each and every one of you for beaming into the Indigenous Ways Wisdom Circle. This would not be possible. These events would not be possible without you. So make sure, as Carla was talking about earlier, that share this link, whether that be through Zoom. We also know, because of the bandwidth, a lot of the communities, we're a nonprofit here based in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So a lot of the communities that we service have low to no bandwidth. However, they can see us through social media while we go out through that door. But we're very grateful for each and every one of you for beaming in. We're also very grateful to our interpreters tonight, Sandra, who is interpreting at the moment, our voice, Audrey. So let's please give it up for our interpreters and making access available for all. But most importantly, for the very powerful discussion tonight and sharing her own experience, but also planting a lot of seeds that a lot of you have been already thinking about as those seeds have been planted, or just an awakening too with the powerful message that she brought. So let's give it up for the amazing Carla Garcia Fernandez, Doctor.
This is Tosh. Yeah, this is Tosh. I just want to ask Arletta, is it possible that you can stay on? Arletta saying thank you. Arletta and Carla, can you stay also? The two of you, Carla, can you stay, and Arletta, can you stay on?
So with that,
yeah, Carla, hold on. So if Carla and Arletta can stay on after we hang up, because I want to talk to both of them.
Perfect. Thank you. So thank you, everyone, for beaming in. We'll look forward to seeing you on Friday. We have at the Concert Circle, same channel, same time, with Mama's Black Sheep. If you can't make it on Friday, it'll all be recorded. If you haven't signed up to our newsletter, IndigenousWays.org.
Rebecca's got something.
Otherwise, just before I go to Rebecca, otherwise we'll look forward to seeing you on Wednesday. Rebecca, you have the last word.
Okay.
Yes, same time.
8.
Black Lives Matter.
For Black Lives Matter, Tosh?
Oh,
yes, you have interpreters as well. We're going to
yes.
continue to have interpreters for the Friday and Wednesday series.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay,
yes.
good. I wanted to make sure.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Spread the word, Rebecca. I also watch you and see you and have seen you also. You're an amazing. If you want to send your contact information, send it to us and we can connect, and you can join us, and maybe we can have you present one Wednesday for us.
So, Rebecca, for you, all of these events have ASL interpreters. It's important for access for all. You can go into our archives. We have a deaf presenter every month. Very, very powerful. So all these different people sharing their experience, looking at rising and resilience, particularly at this time, because we do this to get it. So with that, we'll look forward to seeing you all. Please stay safe. And one more time, let's give it up for Carla, and also for her amazing words of wisdom, of rising and resilience, of what she's done in her experience, but for today. So let's give it up for Carla. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We love you. Love you. Stay safe. Keep your masks on. Do your distance.
All right, and I want to thank you, Chandra, and I want to thank Audrey and
Dusty, great to see you back again. Thank you now for popping in.
Rebecca. Email us, and then we'll connect. Rebecca, if that's okay, I'd love to talk to you more.
So I know Tash asked.
Okay. Christina also wants to contact Rebecca as well.
Perfect. What we'll do is we'll send these all out. I know Tash asked to talk to Carla and Orletta to stay on the line. It might be better that we go off and come back because it's getting beamed out through the social media. Do you want that, or do you want to come back in again?
Oh, okay. We need to stop the recording, Carla and Arletta. So let's get Elena to stop the recording.
Well, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop it, and then let's come back in. That's the best way to do it. Otherwise, it's going to go out through our social media, which we're doing at the moment.
Okay. Is
Okay.
that cool?
We'll see you back here in a minute. Same address. Okay. And thank you all those that are in our social networks as well seeing this.